All right, so this is the Learning Target Tracker video for immune system. And so we're going to go over some things. I might be bouncing between the PowerPoint. I'll definitely be drawing some stuff, filling out the guided notes, so you can check your answers to that here. Or if you just have any questions about the immune system, things you're not sure about, welcome. We will go over that. All right, so the first one, and I'm going to share my screen here. The first one is that I can explain signal transduction, because the immune system, when we talk about it, is being talked about in relation or in the unit with cell signaling. We're also going to talk about mitosis, but we're not there yet. But mitosis also has a big role in the immune system, because that's how your cells proliferate or make copies of themselves so that you can have an immune response. Wow, this is not wanting to focus, but maybe it will. There it goes. All right, so with cell signaling, what happens with the immune system is you have these cells in your body that are circulating. So this is an immune cell. Okay, these could be macrophages, these could be B cells, T cells, just any cell of your immune system. They are circulating around your body, mainly in the lymph fluid. So the lymph system has a circulatory portion to it, kind of like the circulatory system. You have lymph vessels and lymph nodes, and this fluid circulates through that all the time. Well, in that fluid are these cells, and these are elsewhere in your body too, but that's one place that they are, is in that fluid. So what they do is they are going to meet up with some cells that you have. And I'm going to label these differently, and I'll tell you what these labels mean in just a second. All right, so when you, all of your cells, when your cells are created in your body, they all have these little flags on them. You might remember us talking about that in Unit 1. There are glycolipids and glycoproteins, these carbohydrate chains that are attached to your cell membrane, and they are going to say, I belong here. So all of my cells are going to have Miss Piro flags on them. All of your cells are going to have little flags with your name on them. Okay, so some kind of signal that lets the body know those cells belong there. And so when this immune cell comes, it's going to dock up. They're actually going to touch. So this would be with direct contact. And the ligand is that flag on your cells, and the receptor is on the immune cell. And so that receptor is going to bind to that ligand. That's going to initiate a response in the receptor, and the immune cell is going to do something. All right, if it is let me put an H in front of here. If it's a healthy body cell, okay, so it's, one of your, I don't know, skin cells, blood vessel cells, blood cells, whatever, but it is healthy, then the immune system is going to give it a check, and it's going to send it on its way. It's going to de-dock. I don't know that that's a word. It's going to undock from that cell. They're going to separate, and the immune cell is going to move on and do its business. If it comes upon a virally infected cell, so this is also one of your cells, and it has a little flag on it that says, hey, I belong here. But it also has taken a piece of the virus that infected it and put it up on its surface. And that is basically telling the immune cell, hey, I belong here, but I'm sick. And the immune cell is going to initiate a response that will lead in the death of this cell. So it will initiate a response in here that will cause this cell to die. Sometimes it releases chemicals that punch a hole in the membrane. There's just different things. Sometimes it'll eat it. It'll actually engulf it through endocytosis if it's small enough. It just depends, okay? So that's what's gonna happen to a virally infected cell. And then the third thing that the immune cell, might see is a pathogenic cell. So this could be a bacteria, or really it is anything that does not belong in your body. So if you get a splinter, it could be the wood of the splinter, or it could be the bacteria on the wood of the splinter. If you get shot with a BB gun when you're like 6 years old, that BB is gonna not have U flags on it. And so it's gonna have, so it's not necessarily, when I say a pathogen, it's not necessarily a bacteria or a virus, although it often is, but it is anything that is foreign. So I probably should have put a foreign cell there instead of FC instead of PC. But anyway, when the immune cell reads that one, it's going to say, hey, you don't belong here. You don't have the right flags. And it is going to go through a process again where it kills that cell, or it tries to. If it's wood or a BB, it might not be able to, but it's going to try. And so it will initiate either engulfing. A lot of times these get engulfed. So they get brought in through endocytosis, and they fuse with a lysosome and are digested. Whereas a lot of times these are killed externally. So a lot of times the immune system, there is a chemical called perforin. There's also the complement system, and both of those will punch holes in this membrane. So those are ways, if you punch a hole in that membrane, then all of the contents are just going to ooze out and the cell's going to die. And so a lot of times that's how they kill it, is they just punch holes in the membrane and then it all oozes out and it dies. And so that's signal transduction, because what's happening is you have this reception where this ligand is binding to the receptor. Transduction is going to occur in the immune cell, and then you're going to get some kind of response. Either, hey, you're okay, go about your business, or you're not okay and I'm going to kill you, okay? I can describe the relationship between structures and functions of the immune system. So some of the main things we're going to talk about with the immune system are lymph nodes. And so lymph nodes are scattered throughout your body. And that is one thing that is really important, because your body is constantly being invaded by pathogens and other bad things. And you want lymph nodes all over the place. And so if you look at the picture in the PowerPoint, I think it talks about, maybe there's a picture, maybe I'm thinking of the the nervous system with that, the endocrine system. But if you look at, nope, here it is, all of the lymph nodes, you can see that there are lymph nodes, these little yellow dots, all over your body. Lots of them are around your head and neck. And the reason for that is you have a lot of orifices in your head, a lot of holes in your head, ears, nose, mouth, eyes, lots of places for things to get in. You also have a lot around your groin, because again, you have a lot of orifices there. I can't say that word, holes. You have the urethra. If you're a female, you also have the vagina, and then you have the anus. So there's lots of ways things can get in. So you're going to see those lymph nodes are kind of accumulating around those areas where there's a lot of entryways. We also see a lot in the chest. And I guess that's because maybe your lungs and your heart, especially your lungs, because they're connected to your head, then they can get infected really easily. So every one of these lymph nodes can and is full of cells and can respond. So any one of these lymph nodes can swell. And when lymph nodes swell, that is simply because they are doing an immune response. They're making lots of new cells to respond to whatever the pathogen is. And so that's part of their structure as well, is that they are able to increase in size. They do have these, you can see the structure, these vessels that come in. And so that lymph fluid can come in, it can circulate around, and it can leave again. And then a lot of these cells, again, can multiply. There's room for them to multiply. And so that structure allows for the function of the lymph node, which is to mount an immune response. Your lip vessels are just like your circulatory vessels. They're thin, they're long, they're for fluid and cells to be moved around your body really quickly. And so they do that. You also have your lymphocytes. Their locations and their structures are such that they can respond. They have receptors on their body, on their cell membranes that allow them to respond. They're moving through these lymph vessels and in the lymph nodes and circulating around. Their goal and their job is to see as many cells as possible, because the more cells they see, the more likely they're going to be to catch not a predator. Well, I guess technically it is a pathogen. And then of course you've got your receptors. And so when we talk about receptors, the receptors are different shapes. So you're going to have all these different receptors on your cells, which seems crazy, but basically your receptors should match your body cells. And if they don't, that's how it knows it's not there. But you are going to have receptors that are of all kinds of different shapes and sizes and everything. And those are going to allow you to respond to different things. Antibodies are another example. Antibodies are structurally different. You can respond to anything that comes in your body. If I go to Mars, which I'm not going to, but if I did, and got some Martian soil and brought it here, something that your body has never seen, and I put it in your body, you would form a response to that. You would form an antibody to that. So your body has the ability to form antibodies to just about anything. And the way that those antibodies are different is that they match the structure of the pathogen. So if the pathogen is round, then that antibody is going to be kind of round. If that pathogen were square, then the antibody is going to be more square. And antibodies are generally kind of Y-shaped. They kind of look like that. And so this portion up here is what binds to the pathogen, and that's the part that's going to be differently shaped so that it can match the different pathogens. So again, structure and function with the receptors as well as with the antibodies, very much so, very much their structure is tied to their function, so that they match exactly what they need to match. All right, I can differentiate between the adaptive and the innate immunity. So let's talk about that just a second. So the innate immunity, innate means something you're born with. And so this is the immunity that you are born with. It is not specific. It's going to respond the same way to every pathogen that's out there. And so whether you are infected by a virus or a bacteria or whatever, it's going to respond the same. It's not specific to the pathogen. Whereas your adaptive immunity is specific. This is the immunity. This is the immune system that learns. This is the immune system we talk about, like with Micah getting so sick these first couple of years in daycare. His adaptive immunity is still developing. It's still learning. It's still building up memory cells and those kinds of things. So that's the immune system that we talk about, that you are educating over time. Every time you are exposed to a pathogen, this is where your memory cells come from, okay? So I can differentiate between the two. The innate is you're born with it. Okay, it's not specific. Adaptive, you're not born with it. It has to build up over time, and it is specific to the pathogen. I can list the 5 components of the innate immune system. All right, so the first, and it doesn't really matter what order you put these in, and it actually says I can list, the next one says I can describe the 5 components, so we're going to do that all at once. So the first one we're going to talk about is a barrier defense, and your barrier defense is just what it sounds like. It is a barrier to keep pathogens out. So it is everything on the external parts of your body that tries to keep your pathogens away from you. That is going to be your skin. Okay, obviously that's probably the most obvious one. It's going to be your stomach acid. So things that get into your body through your stomach are hopefully going to not be able to get past the barrier of that acid. Hopefully that acid will just tear it up. You also have a chemical called lysozyme. Lyse means to burst or break, and it's going to, and then this just tells you it's an enzyme. It doesn't end with ace like it should, but anyway, it's an enzyme that breaks things apart, and that it's going to be really harsh against pathogens that come into your eyes. So it's found in your tears, it's found in your saliva, and some other, like your mucous membranes, things like that, just to keep those pathogens from getting in your body. And if they do, it tries to break them down. You also have your good bacteria. So like in your gut, in your intestines, you have lots of good bacteria, and they're keeping the bad bacteria kind of at bay. All right, the next one is the inflammatory response. This is driven by your mast cells. I'll squeeze that in there. Your mast cells release histamine, and that's going to tell the rest of the immune system to do some things. And so it is kind of, there are 4 parts, I don't want to say parts, but characteristics to an inflammatory response, because what happens with the inflammatory response, the mast cells release histamine, and a lot of other cells are called over to that site. It's basically a call that says, hey, we got a problem over here, and then everybody rushes to that site to fix that problem. So because things are rushing from all over your body, it's going to bring heat, because things in the core of your body, your torso, your chest, your abdomen, are going to be warmer. And so when they move to the external parts of your body, your arms, your legs, hands, feet, skin, is going to be warmer than that area. So it's going to feel like you have what we call a localized fever. It's not a fever like up here. It's a fever like if I got a splinter right here, I would have a little fever right here where it's warm right there, because it's bringing those hotter cells from hotter parts of my body. Redness, so you're going to see it turn red. That's because you've just got more blood flow to that area. That's one of the reasons. And then you're going to see swelling. That's because, again, you're seeing lots more cells and fluid come to that area, so it's just getting bigger. And then pain. Okay, and some of that is from that extra stuff being in there, and it's stretching and pushing on your nerves. And some of that is part of the immune response too, because if you're in pain, you're probably going to baby that site a little bit and maybe keep it from getting further infected, keep another pathogen from getting in there, because you're going to be paying attention to it because it hurts. Another are our antimicrobial proteins. Can't talking right at the same time, apparently. And they are just what they sound like. They are proteins that work against microbes. Microbes are just microscopic things, and in this case are pathogens. And there are two main groups that we talk about. We have our interferons, which are actually sometimes used as a medication. We'll talk about that in a second. They're going to stop viruses from reproducing. And then we have our complement system, which I mentioned just a little bit ago, is going to punch holes in the membrane of bacteria or whatever. Interferons are actually used for some autoimmune disorders. For some reason, they work. Multiple sclerosis is one of them. So some people with MS take interferons, and it helps tamp down that response because their body's attacking their myelin when it shouldn't. All right, the next one is the natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are immune cells that are going to kill cancer cells. So when your cells transform and become cancerous, they're still your cells. They still say Mrs. Pirro or Johnny or Sally or whatever. But they also have some other little markers on them that tell the body that they're not normal. And so a lot of times your immune system will kill these cancer cells and you won't get cancer. Like your body won't let it get to that point. Now, obviously, a lot of times that doesn't happen, and sometimes the cancer can grow beyond the immune system's ability to stop it. But these natural killer cells are going to target cancer cells as well as virally infected cells. So if they come across a cell, one of your cells that's infected with a virus, they are going to kill it. They're going to work and to kill that cell, a lot of times by punching holes in it, but there's other things they can do as well. And then the last group are our phagocytic white blood cells. And these are things like neutrophils, macrophages, which means literally big eater. Macro means big, phage means eater. Eosinophils, which tend to target parasites like malaria. That's what I always think of when I think of eosinophils. Your dendritic cells, which are also a part or can be a part of your adaptive response. But all of these, phagocytic means they're going to do phagocytosis, which is a type of endocytosis. So all of these guys are going to come upon, so here's a little bacteria, here's the phagocytic cell, and they're going to form a vesicle around that bacteria, bring it inside, and then they're going to fuse it with a lysosome and to digest it. So they're going to kill the bacteria that way. And so all of those are non-specific. They're going to respond the same way to a virally infected cell, a bacterial cell, like I said, a piece of pollen in your nose, a piece of wood and a splinter that you've got in your finger. They're all going to try to attack and keep it from going any further. These systems don't learn. They stay, I mean, they're as strong at birth as they're going to be later because they are just doing their job that they do all the time. All right. Then it says, so then we start talking about the adaptive. So some of the I can statements, and I'm just reading these off of my document. I can describe the origin and role of memory or of plasma B cells in the adaptive immune response and memory B cells. So the adaptive immune response is what we're showing down here. And it's going to have two arms. It's going to have a cell-mediated branch or arm, and it's going to have a humoral branch or arm. Humor as in fluid. It's an old-timey word that means fluid. We used to talk about the humors. And if you were sick, they thought it was one of the humors like blood or urine or vomit. They would make you get rid of that. So that's why they used to put leeches on people and bleed them, because they said it was because something was wrong with their blood. So anyway, that's where that root kind of comes from, humoral. All right, so what happens with this is, I'm going to get over to my notes because I'm not going to. We're going to have we have a cell that is infected. Probably a virus, maybe not. And what's going to happen with that cell is it is going to take a piece as it's dying. It's going to say, hey, I'm dying. And it's going to throw up a piece of that pathogen that's killing it on its surface. And so it's going to, it's basically like a sinking ship. And as that ship is sinking, it is saying, this is what's killing me. Okay, this is what's making me sink or making me die. So this infected cell is going to put a piece of the pathogen on its surface. It's going to do that with a flagpole, for lack of a better term, that is an MHC. So an MHC is a major histocompatibility complex. fancy word. I just call it the flagpole. And so what it does is it puts this little flag up that says, this is what's killing me. This is, you know, this virus or whatever is what's killing me. And where it's going to put that is it's going to put it on this flagpole. And if it is one of your body cells, it's going to have an MHC class 1 flagpole. Okay. What that's going to happen is these cytotoxic T cells, which we used to call killer T cells, and cytotoxic, cyto means cell, so these are toxic to cells. It is going to kill this infected cell. Okay, so that's the cell-mediated arm. You have an infected cell. As it's dying, it throws up a pathogen on its little MHC flagpole, class 1 flagpole, and this cytotoxic T cell is kind of cruising around the lymph fluid, and it happens to see this and says, "Ooh, you're infected," and kills it, okay? So that's the cell-mediated branch. The humoral branch, you're going to have some kind of, I probably should have put phagocytic cell, but I'm going to be more specific. You're going to have your macrophage or your neutrophil or eosinophil or dendritic cells, and they're going to see an invader, not one of your infected cells. This is an infected body cell. So this is your cell. It has little flags on it that say, "I belong here," but it also has this flag that says, "I'm sick and dying, and this is what's killing me." Anyway, the macrophage is going to find or eat anything that's foreign. So it sees something that says, "Oh, you don't belong here. All right, we'll get rid of you." And it's going to put a piece of that, we're going to call that the antigen, on the surface using an MHC class 2 flagpole. Okay, so just two slightly different structures. These are only found on phagocytic cells, or immune cells, I should say. And so you're never going to see one of these with a MHC2 activating this, because the MHC2 activates the humoral pathway, and only your immune cells can do that. So they're the only ones that are going to have those on it. Okay, so what happens is our helper T cells are just, you know, cruising around. They're doing this direct contact thing we talked about earlier. Okay, they're checking out every cell they pass by. And they see that this macrophage has engulfed and killed some maybe bacteria and put a piece of that bacteria on its surface. And so what it's going to do is it's going to activate B cells, going to turn a B cell on, and those B cells are going to form plasma B cells. Plasma B cells are the B cells that produce antibodies. And so antibodies, if you remember, I drew one kind of earlier, they kind of look like the letter Y, okay? And so what you're going to see happening is you're going to see these antibodies start to be formed to mount this response against the pathogen that's infecting up here. Also, some of these B cells say, "Hey, you guys, y'all do the work right now. We're going to get all primed and pumped up, but we're going to shut ourselves down and form memory cells." And so those cells are what's going to help us out later. So it's not that these guys are being lazy, it's that they know that there's a good chance we might see this bacteria or whatever again. And so they want to they're kind of going for wave number 2 or 3 or 4 or 24 or whatever. Some of us have probably seen some of the same bacteria multiple times, or viruses, and the reason we don't respond, or the reason we don't get sick, is because these guys come in and squash that infection before we even know what's going on. And so they're really important. They're just not acting in this first wave. All right, so now let's look at our I can statements. I can describe the origin and role of plasma B cells. Okay, all of your B cells are going to come from bone marrow. That's why they're called B cells, okay? So they develop in your bone marrow. Your T cells develop in the thymus. So we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so I can describe the origin, bone marrow, and role, producing antibodies, of the plasma B cells. I can describe the origin, bone marrow, and role of the memory B cells, which is to mount that second or repeated response. It might be the second, it might be the 202nd. I can describe the origin and role of cytotoxic or killer T cells. So they originate from the thymus, and their job is to kill infected cells. I can describe the origin and role of helper T cells. Again, they originate in the thymus. They are going to activate B cells. They can also actually activate cytotoxic T cells. If they get to this cell first, they can say, "Hey, Mr. Killer T cell, I need your help," and call one of these over and activate it to kill that cell. I can describe the origin and role of antibodies. So antibodies, their origin is a plasma B cell, and their role is to do a couple of different things. They can neutralize a virus. So most viruses get into your body, or into your cells, I'm sorry, your cells, by binding to a receptor. So they have some kind of receptor on them that allows them to bind to, a cell in your body and get in it. Like, for example, HIV actually binds to your T cells, and that's one of the reasons it's so bad. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm looking for, there we go. But antibodies can bind to the receptors on the virus, or to the molecules that bind to your receptors. So let's look at it this way. So let's say that you've got, here's your cell. And on your cell, you have, for example, COVID, I think they're saying, is binding to the ACE receptor, okay? So here's old nasty COVID, right, with its little whatever that binds to the ACE receptor, and that is how it gains entry into your cells. What antibodies do is antibodies come in and they bind to these molecules. So now that molecule cannot bind to the ACE receptor and it can't get in. That is called neutralization, because what it does is it neutralizes that virus. It basically stops it from doing anything. It makes it neutral and not harmful because it can't get into your cells anymore. They can also mark a pathogen for destruction. So they can attach to something and say, hey, this needs to be killed. And so your immune cells, as they pass by, will see that and they'll kill it. They can bind to toxins in your body. So if you were to be exposed to some kind of poison or toxin, they can bind to that, and that makes it too large to get into your cell. And so it'll just pass through, either be filtered through your liver or your kidneys and then out that way, or through your intestines and go out through your feces. But it just helps, or it could go somewhere else and be broken down. So it just really depends. So those are some of the roles of antibodies. And again, their origin is these plasma B cells down here. All right, I can differentiate between the adaptive responses that occur to a pathogen versus those that occur to an infected host cell. So the response to a pathogen is going to be this humoral pathway. We're going to produce these antibodies, and these antibodies are then going to bind not to the macrophage, not to this piece of antigen on the macrophage, but they're going to bind to all the other pathogens that this came from. So this macrophage ate one of these pathogens through endocytosis. I shouldn't say ate, engulfed one of these pathogens through endocytosis, chewed it up, and then put a piece of it on itself, on its flagpole, on its MHC2. But there are still other ones around. When you get strep throat, you don't get just one streptococcus bacteria. You get hundreds or thousands or millions. And so there's lots of these others around. That's what the antibodies are going to go to. They're going to go bind to these because they were built in response to this. So this piece of this pathogen is a certain shape, and the antibodies are going to be built to match that shape. So they will bind to that same shape on each of these pathogens. So that's what happens if you have a pathogen. If it's an infected body cell, then of course your cytotoxic T cells are going to come in and take care of that. I can explain the role of the major histocompatibility complexes. So we have a class 1 on your body cells and a class 2 on your immune cells, and it is really just a flagpole. It is the thing on which we put the piece of the bad person, the bacteria, the virus, the whatever. It is the flagpole on which we fly that flag, so to speak. I don't know of a better analogy. Because that's exactly what's happening. Is you have this piece of pathogen and you send it out on that MHC class 1, and that's what kind of holds it up there and waves it around and says, hey, this is what the bad thing is, so that the cell or the body can respond. So that's the job of the MHC, is to display that piece of the pathogen. All right, I can explain why a repeat exposure results in a faster and stronger immune response, and that is because of these guys right here. You also have memory T cells, memory T helpers, and memory T killers. And so because you have these cells already made, they don't have to take the time to be produced to match. They already match. And so it's just going to happen faster because they've already gone through like steps 1 through 10. And they only have to do like steps 11 and 12. So you can imagine if you could bypass 10 of your 12 steps, and I'm just making up numbers, but if you can imagine if you could bypass the majority of the process that it takes to make you, then the whole process would be much faster. I can explain how knowledge of the immune system has enabled the development of vaccines. Well, now that we know about this whole memory part of our bodies, that's when we started figuring out, oh, you know what? If we can expose people to little bits of the pathogen, just like macrophages do, then they will mount this response, and then they'll have these memory B cells. And so, you know, we have to know how much so that we don't make you sick. We just want to give you enough to make you mount this response. And I say we as scientists, you're a scientist too, so you're part of that we. So it's just trying to figure out what is the best part of the pathogen to display to the person. But that's the whole goal of that, is knowing about this whole memory process has allowed us to use it to our advantage. The bacteria probably, our viruses probably don't really love it, but we do, because it helps us fight off those viruses. I can describe various disorders associated with the immune system. The main ones are going to be immunodeficiency. So immunodeficiency is when your immune system is deficient. It is not working like it should. HIV is one example of that. It's a human immunodeficiency virus. And so it is a contagious, contracted form of immunodeficiency. And SCID is another, severe compromised immunodeficiency, or combined. I might be remembering that wrong. I don't have it on here. But anyway, that's what, if you've ever heard of the bubble boy syndrome, that's what bubble boy syndrome is. It's that SCID. They basically are born without an immune system, and they have to be really well quarantined and really well protected. But basically their immune systems aren't working like they should, and they can't fight off infections. Most people don't die from HIV or AIDS. They die from an opportunistic infection. They die from some kind of bacteria or virus that gets in their body and they can't fight it off. And so that's what we generally see with these immunodeficiencies. Another disorder would be autoimmunity. And autoimmunity is simply where your body mistakes something normal for something that's not. So it might think, oh, these pancreas cells, I don't think they're supposed to be here. And you end up with diabetes. Or, oh, this myelin on these neurons, I don't think that's a good thing. And it attacks it, and you end up with multiple sclerosis. All of your autoimmune disorders are a disorder of the immune system. So they are where your body is being attacked when it should not be. There's lots of drugs to treat that. There's a lot of immunosuppressants. So they don't suppress the immune system completely, but they suppress it enough to shut down that extra response that it's doing, or at least get it under control so it's not creating a lot of problems. Because autoimmune disorders are bad because they have a lot of symptoms, but also because they're doing damage to your body. So even though even if you took, if you had a painful autoimmune disorder, even if you took ibuprofen to cover the pain, the autoimmunity is still damaging the structures of your body. So you want to do more than just take a pain reliever. You want to take something that's going to shut down that response. But there's a balance there, because you don't want to shut your immune system down enough that you can't fight off infections of other natures. All right, so I can explain how modern medicine has worked to correct these disorders. HIV, they've come up with all kinds of cocktails of drugs, combinations of drugs that help prevent the virus from replicating, to the point that some people who have HIV never contract AIDS. It never converts. Their viral levels never get that high. Autoimmunity, I've said immunosuppressants are the number one probably treatment there for most of those people. They are looking at anything that's genetic now, like SCID is a genetic disorder. They are looking at CRISPR as potential, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later, but they're looking at that as a potential way to treat genetic disorders. And so there's a lot of hope and expectation with that could be really great. And then the last thing is I can name 3 things I can do to help my immune system work better. Your immune system is not just what it is. Okay, you can make it better. And some things that you can do is you can eat healthy. I know you might just want that McDonald's hamburger, and every now and then that's okay, but you don't need to be eating McDonald's 3 times a day, every day for the rest of your life. Not only is that going to impact your other systems like your cardiovascular system, it's going to impact your immune system, because you're not going to have the vitamins and nutrients you need for your enzymes to work as efficiently as they need to. And so enzymes run chemical reactions. All of this is based off of chemical reactions. And so you've got to make sure that you got the things that you need in your body so that these things can run smoothly. So eating healthy, exercise. There's a lot of proof, or a lot of research that has gone into showing that people who exercise tend to get sick less. Now, if you exercise to the point of exhaustion, that's a different story. You don't want to overdo it, because then you're stressing your body out, and stress is a thing you can do that actually hurts your immune system. So a third thing you can do, so eat well, exercise, moderately exercise, and lower your stress. Find ways. Sometimes you can't handle all of your stress. You can't stop it all because sometimes it's coming from outside. What you can stop is your reaction to it. So you can say, you know what, this could be really stressful, but I know that a week from now, it's going to be all okay. It's going to be over. Whatever the stressor is, it's going to be done. Maybe it's a big paper that you have to write or a test you're studying for or a college application you're filling out. But in a week, it's going to be over. It's going to be fine. That stress will be gone. And so I'm not going to let it bother me right now because I know in a day, a week, a month, it's going to be better. And so it's going to be fine. It's all going to work out in the end because things, they just normally do. So that's another thing you can do is decrease your stress. And for that, like I said, you may not be able to decrease the stress, but you can decrease the way that the anxiety and the way that you respond to that for most people. Now, if you have a true anxiety disorder that's a chemical issue in your nervous system, that's a whole different story. But anyway, so do things, make sure nature, sunshine has been shown, just get out, breathe clean, fresh air in the sunshine. Exercise is supposed to be a good stress reliever. Just take some time, some downtime so that your stress levels aren't too high. There was another one. Oh, healthy choices. So HIV is a contractable disease through sexual intercourse and needles. So making healthy choices there. There was another one that I thought about a minute ago that I was going to say, need to remember. Oh, rest. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. I know that's hard because, you know, there's so many good things on Netflix and I've got so much homework. You don't have to watch all the Netflix. You do probably need to do your homework. So do that. But make sure you're getting adequate rest. Teenagers need about 10 hours of sleep a night. 10. Most of you are not getting anywhere near that. So make sure you're try for 7 or 8 at least if you can, and get more when you can. So those are just some things to do. Just living a healthy lifestyle, trying to de-stress, learning how to manage your stress so that it doesn't overtake you is a good a lifelong skill that I promise will help you a lot now, but also later. And that's the immune system. That's really long, and I'm sorry. This is basically what we would have done in class if I had taught this live instead of doing a Nearpod. So there you go. I hope that helped. If you still have questions, please, please, please let me know. Let me stop sharing my screen, and we'll go over those questions in class.